Most veterans don't know what to write in a personal statement, and then the VA ends up missing the entire story behind that veteran's condition and how it's connected to their service. Today, I'm going to show you the exact structure that I use and you can use to write yours in about 10 minutes. And if you want to stay organized, I put together a simple VA claims strategy dashboard. It's a spreadsheet that helps you out with, putting together your whole plan of action for what you're going to do with your disability claim. We all know it's a confusing, process, and it takes a lot of time, and there's a lot of moving parts. So I put something together that I think will be helpful to veterans, especially veterans that are, going to a VSO and they don't feel like they're getting exactly what they should get from the VSO. And I think the problem with that is a lot of VSOs are so busy and vets don't always know what it is that needs to happen to make things work for their VA disability claim. This spreadsheet, I hope, can solve that problem. Hopefully by just filling it out, you will be able to figure out what you're missing, and you'll be able to take that thing, print out the dashboard portion, bring it to your VSO, and I think the light bulb will go off in their head at what you're trying to do. And I also think you'll learn a little bit by doing it, and it might make your process a bit easier. Hopefully, the dashboard helps you so much so that you don't necessarily need to rely on a VSO, but I do recommend doing that. I priced this thing really low. I did have to put a price on it because I put some work into it and on this channel. So I am charging just to cover some of those, just some of that time that it took me to do that. So if it helps you out, grab it. And if not, it's no pressure at all. I'm still going to continue to put out, free information here and on the website, informedveteran.com. So before I jump into all of that and how I actually do it, I just want to talk really quickly. What is this personal statement actually does for your VA disability claim? Number one, it fills in, the gaps that medical records might not cover. Okay, for a lot of us, we have direct service connection, but maybe we were out for a long time. So we need to write that personal statement to really just tie everything in together, and so that the VA rater can see it. And it also helps the C&P examiner as well. It'll help you explain your symptoms, that you have with this. You might even be able to explain some of the symptoms that you had in the military without even realizing or getting a diagnosis for whatever claim you're putting in. So that's truly helpful, and I'll tie all this in so you understand why or what I mean by all this. It also shows, you're able to show your functional impact or how your condition impacts your daily life by writing a personal statement and really articulating it. And then, of course, it reinforces consistency across your claim. A VA claim is really just a package of everything, a bunch of evidence, and that personal statement just reinforces everything all in one. Now, how a strong statement's going to help your claim? Number one, it'll make it easier for the VA rater, okay? And that's what we want. We want the VA rater to read that personal statement first. Whenever I push forward a claim, I want them to read the personal statement before they read everything, because I tie everything in together and I source everything, I cite everything. It also reinforces your credibility. You're making a statement, and your statement is backed up by medical evidence that's all consistent, so it makes you more credible. It can truly justify increases for a higher percentage, and I've seen that firsthand. If you explain everything on a piece of paper when you're actually thinking about all those things, it makes it easier for you, especially if you're sitting in front of a C&P examiner and you don't like to complain about your condition. That personal statement can really jog your memory and help the C&P examiner understand what you're going through. And then, of course, a personal statement can also help your VSO understand your case quickly. So especially when you tie your personal statement to the dashboard that I offered at the beginning of this video. All right, so this is what I do when a personal statement. I use the personal statement form that the VA hands out, or that you can get online. If you haven't seen it, it's basically a form that has a bunch of information at the top. It's all your information, your social security number, all that stuff. I put that all on there, and then there's a notes section, and I never get everything into the small notes section at the bottom. I do end up having to write a little bit more, but I will say that I encourage you not to go too crazy and give too much information, because the VA raters are trying to do these things at a quick pace, and they may not, they'll have time to read it all, but if there's a bunch of extra stuff, it may not be helpful for them. So how I start this thing off is I write first in the very top is I write DC for diagnostic code, and then I write the diagnostic code so that they know exactly what I'm trying to do here. And then I might, I'll put in the condition. So in this case, it's migraines, if you can see that. And then I'll start writing a paragraph, and I will say, the purpose of this communication, or, I was initially diagnosed with whatever the condition is. And I talk about the date, when I was diagnosed with this, or I might talk about when I first started, or I'll talk first about the diagnosis, like when it was diagnosed. And then I may, depending on what it is, if I remember having symptoms that date back to active duty time, I'll write on there. With migraines, I might say I've experienced headaches from, the first time I remember starting to get, excessive headaches was, when I was in active duty, and I would come home and I would have a headache. Whatever it is, I would explain that when it started. And that's huge, because if you really did have headaches when you're in active duty, but you just never went to the doctor, that's huge, because you're telling them, like, this started when I was in the military. And then hopefully you're tying that on with maybe a buddy statement or whatever, whoever witnessed that or observed that during that time. Or maybe you're just simply saying, I was first diagnosed with headaches when I was in the military, in whatever year, as indicated in my service treatment records, dated such and such date. That's a huge statement, because that shows that you were initially diagnosed with migraine headaches while you were in the service. And that almost gives you your direct service connection, okay? But then you need to go down and you need to talk about continuity of care, or continuity of symptoms. I continued to have these headaches when I got out of the military, but I didn't have free medical insurance, so I did not go to the doctor, and I didn't need to, because I already knew what was wrong with me. I was taking medication, whatever it is. And you want to talk about that during that portion of the paragraph. And I will typically make a separate paragraph for talking about how these symptoms have continued on from the time that I was diagnosed in the military all the way up into now. And then, of course, you want to talk about the impact that it has on your life. You want to talk about what it keeps you from doing, or what the level of impact it is on what you're doing. And you also want to talk about the symptoms. You want to talk about the frequency of your headaches, or whatever it is. And you want to make sure that you're able to clearly articulate that. Now, a pro tip for you is to make sure you know what the VA cares about. You want to look at the 38 CFR. So you want to Google your condition plus 38 CFR, because it's going to give you the criteria for what the VA looks for. And that's important, because, if you're you obviously want to talk about all your symptoms, but if you don't merit any of those, or you're trying to get an increase and you don't necessarily need it, you may not need a personal statement or a claim at all. But if you think that you're trying to get like up to a 50% for something, and you're currently at 30, then you want to make sure that you're talking about, the symptoms that you have that correlate with the 38 CFR at the next rating criteria, wherever you are. And those are important. I also want to point out too, that if you're going for an increase, you don't want your personal statement to really talk about, you don't need it to talk about service connection. You might say, I am currently service connected for migraines. I'm requesting an increase. The reason I'm requesting an increase is because of X, Y, and Z. You don't need to talk about continuity of care in that circumstance. You just you can skip over that. You don't need to explain how often you went to the doctor, and continued to get care for that, or your symptoms for that, because you already have it. You're already connected. You just want to jump right into talking about the impact and symptoms and etc. Now, that's pretty much it. We don't need a whole lot of other things. You could give examples like, my headaches have caused me to miss work. I called out of work 6 times in the past year, as indicated by, if you have like some sort of leave and earnings slip where it shows how many times you called out sick, that would be great evidence to provide. Or maybe your boss can write a letter for you saying that you called in sick and cited your reasons because you had a migraine headache. That's all great evidence to draw back on this. So that's essentially what a personal statement structure should look like for you when you're writing these. Remember, the personal statement is extremely valuable because it's basically the front page of your claim. It's showing the VA rater what you're looking to, what you're looking at, what you're looking to do, and why you're trying to get to wherever you're trying to get to, and all of the credible evidence, or at least your statement there, and hopefully those are backed up by other pieces of evidence to corroborate everything, making it very, very hard for a VA rater to decide against you on your claim. So I hope that helps. Again, if you want to check out the dashboard, I'll leave a link to it in the description box below. It should help you out. There's plenty of pictures and screenshots that I took, so just check and make sure it's something that will be helpful for you, and good luck.